Somebody's been telling me that. Richard told me that he's not getting an alert, and I was upset. Hey, everybody. Hope you're with us. Hope this is working. Looks like it is so far. We are here with Jeff Johnston, and today we are titled Jeff Dreams, Mindset, and Delegation. And we're going to be talking about a little bit of Jeff's story and specifically how he was able to scale at what I can only assume is one of the toughest times of his life. So he has a lot to talk about with his journey, but he also has had amazing and extreme business success in between. So it's going to be a lot of value for the audience, but there's going to be a lot of mindset stuff. And while it is a little bit heavier episode, this is going to be a very real conversation on LinkedIn that I'm excited to have. So let's get going.
All right.
Hey guys, I want to give everybody just a few seconds to get here, just because we started a little bit late and it seemed like everybody was trickling in. So I want to kind of tee up the episode. Corey, why don't you go ahead and I guess chat a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things that I mentioned to Jeff and you and I talk about all the time, Ryan, and that people are starting to say to us, which is really kind of a neat thing, is that this show and what MCO Advisors is doing kind of in the LinkedIn community, but in the community in general, is we're really starting to bring the advisor community together, which has been in the past a very segmented group. People have kind of lived in their channels and lived, firm to firm, and advisors haven't really gotten together per se. And it's been really neat to start to bring advisors together. And I think the conversation we're about to have with Jeff will further solidify kind of, doing that. We're not here this isn't a day to sell. This is a day to learn and have fun and have an engaging, entertaining, but thoughtful conversation. So that's just a couple things I wanted to share off the bat.
Absolutely. I'm more than excited to have Jeff on. We had a good conversation yesterday and we had the chat and he started, and Corey, you always talk about the authenticity of the conversation and had to shut Jeff off. It's like too much good stuff, too much good show stuff. Had to back off the content. So, but I already know it's going to be great. And again, as deep as it is, it's very real. And it's a conversation, I'm excited to have, and I'm excited to learn from Jeff. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him on. And we'll go ahead and let Jeff introduce himself and hear a little bit of his background before we get kind of into the meat of the show.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going, man? I know you had a little bit of tech trouble this morning. StreamYard can sometimes be annoying to work with. We've had some people have a little issue, so I appreciate you getting through it and living undeterred and getting here.
Well, I reached out to my one of my key technology staff stakeholders, I guess, and she kind of helped me a little bit this morning. So I want to thank Molly for that.
Thanks, Molly.
Yeah, I guess I'll forewarn you that I have ADD, so you guys may need to pull the reins back if I go down certain roads that seem to be going nowhere.
He does too.
Then Ryan and I should get along well. No, I've done this retelling of this story a number of times, and it starts the same but never ends the same. So I think what I wanted to do as a fan of you guys for a while and listening to your show, I've been admiring the different types of guests you've been having on. And that's when I reached out to you guys and said, hey, I'd love to come on as a financial advisor, as an OSJ. Been doing this, I'm 54 years old. I've been doing this since I was 23, and try to bring a little bit different perspective to the table. A lot of your guests do a very good job of what I consider under the hood stuff. The technical aspects of running a financial services practice, the marketing, the asset allocations, the fees and expenses, and all these things that are great. But I think today I want to talk about more the emotional, the human element of our industry and our business, and kind of how dealing with a personal life event, a couple of them, being in this business actually has been a very fortunate thing for me. It's allowed me to do a lot of things that I'm passionate about now that if, say, I was working in a bank or a school teacher, I probably couldn't do because I'd be obligated to go work for somebody else. So I'll talk about that a little bit today. But again, my name is Jeff Johnston. I live in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I'm a branch manager, OSJ, personal producer, whatever you want to call me. I own a company called Premier Investments of Iowa with a lifelong friend of mine. His name is Brock Renner. And we built this thing up from, we used to say, a cubicle and a phone book. That's how we got started, because we didn't have all this technology that everyone has today. So we did the traditional selling life insurance door to door, getting hit in the face every day, all the stuff that you learn as a new advisor. And so I grew the company up, and now we have 9 financial advisors and 7 full-time staff. And we joined LPL 2 years ago. And at the time we had around 500 million of AUM. And today, I think I looked this morning, we're at like 635 of AUM. So the last 2 years, even with all this personal challenges I've went through, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, we were able to actually flourish our business. And I'm going to kind of explain how we did that. And I say we because it definitely wasn't me.
Jeff, how involved are you on a day-to-day basis right now?
Well, I promised when I went down this journey, guys, I would be authentic and I would be genuine. And that's one of the reasons I'm in my safe place down in my man cave with my Iron Maiden poster behind me. This is who I am. I'm not very involved day to day. I'm not going to lie to you. I stopped seeing clients a few years ago, and I can tell you the story how that happened. It was kind of a epiphany moment I had, but I'm not. I've got people that I trust in place. I really like to get into the whole idea of delegation, kind of how I believe that's literally saved my life. And I don't know when you guys wanted me to go down that particular road, but I don't do a lot day to day right now. Again, 31 years in the business, I kind of feel like I'm allowed the ability to pull back. It was extremely important for me to get back into a healthy place emotionally, guys. When I went through what I went through a very dark period of time where I actually went downhill for about a year. And my company was unbelievable, allowing me to not have to worry about anything. And now it's been 4 years since what happened to us happened. And I still haven't got back into the day-to-day mode. And we are still flourishing. We're adding AUM. Our marketing's going good. We're growing. And so I'm in a really good place personally right now, emotionally. But it's like on an airplane, when the oxygen tank comes down, it says, put it on your face first instead of who you're with. I felt like I couldn't help other people until I got myself in a really good place.
Yeah,
and I'm in that place now.
I want to get there, and I know we will. I just want to, you've built such a, you should be proud of the business you've built, right? And you've built such a safe place for the advisors.
It's not your cat, Jeff. That's my baby again.
You've just built a terrific business, frankly. And in the short time I've known you and the little bit I know about you, I feel like that's something you're obviously very proud about. And I would love to know, I asked the first question, how involved are you? Because I want to know, how much coaching, how much, if we rewind even further back, how involved were you in getting, the advisors that are underneath Premier up and running? What did you, what kind of advice did you give those guys or women to get going? And how is the business that you see today where advisors are missing the mark, I just want to provide some value before we get into some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I like most people in this business back in '89 when I came into the career, it was all organic growth. I mean, I found advisors through being active in organizations like the Cedar Rapids Association of Life Underwriters. I actually helped design the $1 Million Roundtable textbook for a while, Life Underwriters Training Council. I was an educator. I was a teacher for probably a decade, and that's where I found a few good advisors through the LUTCF. So I was very active early in my career. That was something I thought that I could attract, not clients, but I could attract good people, kind of like that Jim Collins good to great mentality. Find great humans, invent jobs for them.
Yep.
And that was my mentality building Premier. I didn't advertise, hey, I have a marketing position. Hey, I have a phone appointment setter position. I found great human beings and I invented positions for them at our company, and that's how we grew. And then I ran in the Jim Collins book, and I'm like, wow, I've been doing that for quite a while. Not the level he's been doing it, and so, that's kind of how we grew. And then, in 2016, everything came to a screeching halt. And you kind of have these moments in your life where you look back and there's one or two literally moments, minutes, seconds, that your life changes forever. And I had that happen, and most people listening have had something similar, maybe not the same level, maybe worse. But being in this business has been a great opportunity for me to embrace challenges, kind of that stoic philosophy that I'll talk quite a bit about. A big believer in stoicism I am, and that whole mentality of, pain is unavoidable, but the length of suffering you endure is really your choice. You're not obligated to suffer. If something happens to you and it hurts, well, pain is quite often something that you can't avoid. But the length of how often you go back and torture yourself on negative things that happen is really on you. That's your choice. And so now in this journey I meet people that are grieving, that have lost loved ones, that have been through traumatic events, and they're having a hard time separating the present from the past. And so they're living too far in the past, and it's really pulling them backwards, not elevating them forwards. And so this whole journey I've been on has been, I don't know, it's hard to explain, guys. I'm not encouraging anyone to go through what I went through, but I am a much better human being. I'm a much better man.
Jeff, why don't we get into it? I mean, your story is who you are, and it's I think it's how we'll be able to also compare back to, I mean, scaling, you're already at 500 is amazing. And then to see exponential growth after that during that tough time, let's start talking about it and talk about what changes you went through and how you were capable to keep the mindset of keeping your business going while you're going through all that personally.
Yeah. And if I need a moment or two, that's just normal for me. I tell this story quite a bit, and it's very painful for me to go through. In 2016, I would have been 50 years old. And at that time, I had a thriving practice, happily married, 3 kids. I had everything. And on October 4th, 2016 at 6:30 in the morning, my middle child, Ian, who's a competitive golfer, he's a Division I golfer at University of South Dakota. And he was a sophomore in high school. And I was driving him to the bus barn, which is where we dropped off Ian to play in high school tournaments. And he was the #1 golfer that year, and he had a very good first 2 years. Well, as I'm taking the golf bag out of the back of my car, coffee in hand, waving at the coach, like every parent does when you drop your kid off to Little League or hockey or whatever you do, my phone rang. And looking at the phone, I knew it was going to be a really tough call. And they found my oldest son dead in a hotel room from a heroin overdose. And at that moment, I didn't tell Ian what happened. I had a decision to make. I could tell him that his brother died, or I could save that moment and let him enjoy the day and go on to play in his golf tournament and not let his team down. I decided not to tell him, and I turned around, got in my car, and I thought, then how am I going to tell my wife that our oldest child is dead? And, at that moment, I drove back in my car, and I don't remember anything. And I walked into my house, and my wife was getting all ready to go watch our son play golf. And I couldn't talk, and she knew something really bad happened. And I don't remember a whole lot of that particular moment, but I do know that we both fell to the ground and held each other. And I made a decision at that moment that this was going to be the greatest inspiration that I could ever, the deepest well I could ever get courage from. And I drove up to the hotel room where they found my son, and the sheriff was there with the yellow tape like you see in the movies. And I decided that my wife at the time, we're separated now, and I'll talk about that in a little while, didn't want to go into the room. I decided to go into the room. And right on his bed, there was his belt where he had wrapped around his arm. And I read in my book about the duality of something like a belt, where it can pull your pants up in 1 minute and then can literally be wrapped around your arm and allow that poison to go into your vein in the other minute. So here I was contemplating these deep philosophical things about, here's this thing, a belt laid up in a tourniquet on the bed. And to me, those moments, that duality moment meant a lot to me as I decided to start learning about death and learning about trauma and grief and addiction, all these things that now I'm into this whole different realm that I've kind of fallen into. But anyway, that's the day that it happened. And when the boys came home, I called my dad that day, and I said, my dad's a doctor and he's dealt with death. And I said, how do I tell my boys that their brother's dead? And he said, Jeff, you like to talk, so why don't you just tell them what happened and shut your mouth? And that's what I did. And they sat on the couch, and Ian was crying because he had double bogeyed his last hole, and the team missed state by one shot, and they had never made state before, so he was devastated. And I said, Ian, I have far worse news to tell you than golf. And I said, your brother's dead. And I stopped. And the first thing Ian said was, how'd he die? Drugs? And I said, yeah. And I tell you what, guys, I had this moment where it was unscripted, and I write about it in the book, but I had this two roads vision pop into my head. And I said, I just straightened up and I said, guys, here's what we're going to do. I said, here's the situation we're confronted with. Here's the opportunity, the gift that we are now given. We have two roads to go down. One road of anger, despair, and hatred, and we'll become alcoholics and addicts, or we have a road of inspiration, and this moment can be the greatest single moment that's ever happened in your life. I'm on the second road. I welcome you guys to join me.
And you said this in the moment.
I said, moment, unscripted. I did not want to have anything rehearsed. I talked to my dad to get some guidance. He just told me to shut up. He told me, tell them what happened and stop talking, and then just answer their questions. And that popped into my head, and it's actually a chapter in my book called The Two Roads. And I talk about that whole moment, and then as it turned out, I picked the right road, and so did my two boys. And I write about this at length in the book about what they've each have done and heroic things that they've done and national accolades that they've done. And CBS Sports came out and did a story on my middle son, Ian, about his golf, and Zach Johnston ended up narrating it. It's on the internet. If you just go and type in Ian Johnston, CBS Sports, you'll see the 9-minute documentary. They flew out here and did a story. So I'm like, my mind's racing now. Okay, my son's dead. I'm not going to let this opportunity, I'm not going to let him die for nothing. That's not going to happen. So I shifted gears, and that's where Premier, my company, being an investment advisor and have learned the art of delegating, allowed me to now live this other life I'm living, this living undeterred idea I'm trying to promote, the book, the podcast, the blogs, the public speaking. It's kind of like a new life I'm living. But I'm so fortunate with the human beings that I've picked around me, that I've grown with. I'm the luckiest human on the planet right now to be able to not have to go to work and not worry about clients and not have to do all that stuff, but then still keep adding AUM and growing. And it wasn't luck, guys. I really wanted to have I thought to myself, if I'm going to buy a business and that person I'm buying from has to be there every day, I don't want to buy that business. I want to buy a business where the owner can go on vacation for 3 weeks and nothing happens. So I thought, well, if I'm going to sell my practice, then I want to make sure that if Jeff Johnston gets hit by a bus and and someone's in the middle of negotiating the deal, that deal doesn't fall apart. So as I consult financial advisors, because I do quite a bit of this conversations with financial advisors, is try to get your company built to it's not dependent on yourself. That if something does happen to you, like you have a life event, you're afforded the opportunity to pull back, take some time, get your faculties together, and not have your company go into ruins. And too many people in this business are just control freaks. They don't trust people. They feel like they have to do everything themselves. And I just feel like if they have a life event like I had, they are really setting themselves up for a very difficult road to go on.
Well, God forbid that they don't have a life event like that, but they're still setting themselves up to have to be, on the steering wheel for the rest of their career. So I'd love to know, I want to get back to kind of your story and your mission, but I'd love to know, like, when you do consult with advisors on that, what's the first thing that you notice that people are not doing that they should?
How do you inspire somebody without a life event to kind of push that inspiration of the life event through them?
That's a great question. And I recall as we were building up Premier, and I went to many industry breakout sessions and conferences and listening to these mentors of mine that I really looked up to. And I found out to me that I didn't want, I call them clock punchers. I didn't want myself surrounded by people that were there, that came in at 8, left at 4. I wanted people that were scientists in a way, looking at creating ideas, creating things, coming to me. And one concept that I think that's worked well with me is that I tell the people that I tell them I work for them, my employees, I really end up working for them, that if you're not making mistakes and effing up and doing things wrong, then you're really not learning. And so I highly encourage my stakeholders, my people that I work with, to make mistakes. It's just that we want to be able to talk about them, but then just don't repeat them. And I think far too many people that run organizations look at themselves as bosses or they're at the top of the totem pole. And, the reality is we're not. I mean, we're all human beings. And at the end of the day, we're all very similar. And just because I happen to be in a position where I may have some authority over you doesn't mean that I'm a better person than you. And so I've tried to really get my stakeholders to believe that. And some people have come and gone and haven't worked out, and that's fine. I still get handwritten notes from ex-employees. I mean, we leave on good terms. I don't really believe in burning bridges. So, in regards to employees, I don't sit in staff meetings. I don't get involved in hiring. I feel I'll be a distraction. I'll start biasing things. The processes that are in place that are going well right now, they don't need Jeff Johnston. So that begs the question: why don't I retire? I don't know. I don't know. I'm not ready yet. But I could, right at this moment, retire very easily and be comfortable with that decision. I could also keep doing what I'm doing and be comfortable with that decision. I
Jeff,
just haven't had. Go ahead.
No, what's the point in time where advisors need to be thinking of this delegation or adding members to the team to help offload some of the, day to day?
I would say immediately. And just put yourself in a position. And again, I practice a Stoic philosophy called negative visualization. And that's where you actually imagine things happening bad before they happen. So an advisor right now that has got a very successful practice, and let's say they're marketing under their own name, Jeff Johnston Wealth Management, two employees, very good book of business. Just imagine right now that you can't go to work the next 30 days, starting right this moment, immediately. What would happen to your practice? And if you can't answer that, or if the answer is scaring you, then that's proof right there that you need to do a better job delegating. You got to find people that you trust, that buy into the same vision and belief structure that you believe. And I hate to say this, but I feel sorry for people that can't see it that way. I feel sorry for that advisor out there grinding it that just feels like that they have to be in control of every decision, because inevitably when something does happen and they're going to need some time off, or they're going to need the ability to sell their practice, the less that you are dependent on being there, I think makes that practice more valuable. And again, I could be seeing this wrong. I'm open to anybody's comments on that, but that's kind of that's what's worked for me. And I've got this simple strategy, guys. This may help people listening, but I practice something called knowledge, desire, and time. And this is a strategy that I live by with any decision I make. If I have the knowledge, desire, and time to do something, then I do it myself. If I lack one of those three things, or I don't want to do one of those three things, then I pay someone else to do it.
I love that.
A good example is mowing my yard. I mean, my old house I used to have before I moved here with my son, I used to get to have a riding lawnmower and drive around for a couple hours and mow my yard. Well, it was a couple hours. I didn't mind doing it. I didn't have the time, and I didn't have the desire. I'm not a yardsy guy. People that know me, that's not Jeff Johnston. So a guy was next door mowing my neighbor's yard. I walked over, said, "Hey, can I get 10 free mows? You can just take my riding lawnmower and have it. I just want 10 free mows." And he came in. Now he still mows my yard. $50. I get those 2 hours back. It cost me $50. So that's a small moment, a decision I made doing the knowledge, desire, and time. So, for people that are deciding on how to delegate, maybe that's something. And we actually have the knowledge, desire, and time down on our website to help consumers make the decision whether they need to hire a financial advisor. It's the same decision consumers are making when they're hiring us. Or maybe someone's going to hire Ryan and Corey.
Yeah, I'm going to use this. I'm serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I tell you what other thing is there that you have to use? What criteria would you use if you're going to be delegating something other than knowledge, desire, and time? If you have all three of those, then don't hire Corey and Ryan. But if I don't have the desire to do what you guys do, and I have the knowledge and time, then sure in hell I'm going to hire you guys. And Jeff, that's how I make my decisions.
How much do you, and I already kind of know the answer, I guess want you to lean into this a little bit. It sounds like you have the same mindset for your home life as business, where you're delegating anything that gives you time back for your family versus also delegating anything you want to do. When did the change come of you cutting the lawn? Were you delegating from the family all the time? Was that after your tragedy, you realized I'm not spending enough time with my family, I'm spending time cutting the lawn? What got you to that point to just start realizing those were the only three things that mattered?
I'm not that smart. That's the bottom line. I've tricked myself to tell my brain that a lot of things that I could easily go out and learn, like changing my oil or even setting up my studio down here. I have a high school kid that I pay him and he helps me do everything. And then my Molly at my office, who's my key technology staff person, runs everything. So people are commenting, "Hey, Jeff, man, all your stuff's awesome." I just write the content. That's all I do. I don't do anything else. And I can do simple things like get my ear pods hooked up to my computer to talk to you guys. But I'm just not that smart, and I don't really want to learn too much of that stuff. So again, I've taken that delegating philosophy to build up my wealth management company to now doing my Living Undeterred journey that I'm on. I'm delegating a lot of that now to people that are substantially smarter than me. I don't want to sit down here for 3 hours and learn how to edit my blogs. That's not what I want to do. I want to spend 3 hours writing my blog.
It's fascinating, Jeff, because I feel like a lot of people would think that if they can tackle all these things and complete them and do them, that gives them this sense of confidence that they can do it. In the reverse, you have so much confidence in yourself that you don't need to prove that and just say, I'm not interested in this. I'm just going to pay someone else to take care of it. And I'm going to get that time, desire, or knowledge. I'm going to apply that somewhere else. And I feel like that's like the reverse. You've flipped the confidence thing on its head here. Well,
the other thing is too, is I have confidence in other people, and people that are poor delegators don't. They just don't. They don't have confidence in other people. They have whatever is in their head, and they can't.
Why do you think that's there, Jeff?
I have no idea. Well, again, I'm not that smart. So most people I'm around are better at most things than I am, and I'm very humble in that. I'm not trying to act like I'm great at certain things. I have this unbelievable fire inside of me right now. When my son Seth died at 23 in a hotel room by himself alone, that I am going to change the world in a way that I don't even know what I'm going to do yet. I just keep making shit up as I go. And I don't have an end game. And that is a scary thing. My next blog is called My Addiction to Being Vulnerable. And that's my next blog I'm posting next Wednesday. It's the fear I have that this mission I'm on is helping so many people and helping myself that it's actually chinking my armor a little bit. Each time I tell the story, part of me kind of falls off, but then I'm building a little bit stronger armor as well, somewhere else on my body. So I've got to embrace this as
maybe it's more like shedding snake skin.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy. And being vulnerable is great, and people pat me on the back all the time, but man, it can take a toll. It takes a toll having to repeat this story. But again, I don't want to bury my son, and I'm not in any hurry to join him. If there is an afterlife, I'm not in any hurry to go there and see him at this point. I got him right here, and here. That's really all I need right now to motivate me. And where I have this, I don't know. I had the same desire when I was building up my wealth management company. I'm a competitor, like most financial professionals. I would see someone doing a TV show, and I'm like, well, I can do that better. I'm going to go do one myself. So we did a TV show for 5 years. I heard guys doing radio. I said, I can do that better. Now we're in our 11th year of doing our Premier Investments Financial Hour here in Cedar Rapids.
Hey, Jeff, how different would the conversation be as me, you, Ryan, as a human being for you have been in 2014 versus 2021 today? How different are you in like health-wise, emotionally? Talk to me about that. How different of a person are you?
It's hard to find people that have a burning passion that's not motivated by money. That's the big difference. What I do right now has nothing to do with money. Someone asked me the other day, how many book sales have you made? I have no idea. I'm never going to look, and I don't care. That's not why I wrote the book. How many likes do I have on my blogs? I have no idea. I don't look. And see, I wasn't that way when I was building up my company, because I counted my AUM, counted my revenue, counted my fees, counted my expenses. I did all that stuff. And obviously I love talking about investments, but I wasn't going to do it for free. I don't have a problem doing the rest of my life talking about this Living Undeterred concept for free. I have no problem with that. And it's hard to find something that you're passionate about that you can honestly say you're not doing it for the money.
Could you have built the same size business that you built if you had this mindset the entire time?
It's a good question. I don't know. I like to think maybe I could have, and I got obviously very, very fortunate, but we also made a lot of mistakes. I talked to Ryan yesterday about a $100,000 Ultimate Expo product thing we had developed for, we used to do an expo here in Cedar Rapids. We had 3,000 senior citizens show up our last expo. It was huge. So we packaged it, we marketed it. We had expos in Houston and California and all these places. Well, one day my business partner comes in and shuts the door and said, Jeff, we're $100,000 in the hole. We got to shut this thing down. And I found out why, which I won't get into that right this moment. And we shut it down. And but people don't see those failures. They see everything else I'm doing and say, wow, Jeff's just this magician. Everything he touches is, well, that's not true. I mean, most people in any successful business have more failures than they do successes. So I just keep thinking to myself, what more things can I fail on? Because the more failures I have, the more successes I'm going to have. It's mathematically a high probability that's how life works. So
where my head goes with it a little bit is, I think, I don't think advisors are necessarily thinking this, but I do think there's an idea that, well, easy for him. He has this business that he's built, and he can now focus on kind of talking at 30,000 feet about how I should apply these learnings to my business. But I'm in the weeds, man. I'm at 20 million AUM. I'm scratching and clawing to get this thing going. What advice do you have for that advisor who is in that situation?
There can't be anyone listening right now that's been in the weeds any deeper than me. I have borrowed off every relative I possibly could. I was 24. I went to my grandma. Now, this probably wouldn't work with compliance today, but this was a long time ago. And I had every credit card maxed out. I literally slept in my car, had a typewriter, which I didn't have white out. I had no cell. I mean, it was literally the biggest in the weeds you could possibly be. And I went to my grandma and I said, hey, Grandma, how's everything going? And she said, good. And I said, well, she mentioned something about a CD coming due. And I said, really, what are you getting at your CD? And she said at the time, like 6%. And I said, wow, that's interesting. I have a CD that's paying 10. And she said, really? Where? And I said, you're looking at them. I'm your CD. I'll pay you 10%. We drafted up a document. My grandma and I did. She signed it. I borrowed $20,000 from her. I paid her back over 2 years, every freaking penny with interest. And that's how my mindset was. I would fire banks that decline me to give me money. I would fire them. I said, forget it. You turn me down, I'm going to fire you. I'll go to another bank. And so I can't imagine someone being more in the trenches than I was in. I'm not saying that to be braggadocious or be narcissistic, but the kids today coming in now, it's like they're so impatient. They're so unwilling to take risks. I cashed out IRAs off 50 times. I mortgaged every house I've ever owned. Never gone bankrupt. I knocked on the door, but haven't been there. So people can say, well, yeah, Jeff's lucky. Well, fine. That's fine. I'm lucky now maybe, but I wasn't a long time. And anyone that knows me that has seen me build this thing up with my business partner, Brock, and everyone else, they know the struggles that him and I have had. So anyone out there struggling, keep struggling. The more struggles you have, the more successes you will eventually obtain. And I can't put that in writing, but I can tell you that's kind of how it works. You increase your probability of success exponentially with the more failures that you have.
And how about talking about having a partner for a second? Because going through this, you said it wasn't about you. It wasn't obviously all your success. You were doing a lot of delegating, and I know you were going through a lot. I always talk about the fact, besides the show, that Corey can bounce stuff off each other. We talk a lot about the company. We hold ourselves accountable. How did you and Brock mix from the beginning, and when did you find out it was important that you had somebody else on your team to take you to the next level?
That's a great question. And I tell you, Brock and I have been business partners I've been doing this 31 years. I think he's been a partner with me for 26. We have never had a fight over one penny in 26 years. And him and I are so well together, but we're complete opposites. I call him the bean counter. He manages all the expenses. He does all the bill paying. I'm out there trying to find clients, market, all that stuff. Him and I are just
poor Brock.
Huh?
Brock.
Yeah, exactly. Him and I get along so well because our hearts are very similar, our mindsets are similar, but we are different people. He enjoys being under the hood, changing the oil, fixing light bulbs, doing those things. I detest doing that. I've never been interested in Lincoln Logs and Legos. That stuff. I wanted to go break those things down. That's what I wanted to do. Brock would sit there and probably build Legos when he was a kid, and that's why him and I get along so well, because from that standpoint, we're very opposite, but we also still have a lot of similar traits in regards to how we treat people and what we expect, what our expectations are out of what we put into things. So I've been blessed. I've been very fortunate to be able to have Brock be my business partner, and very, very proud of the relationship him and I have. And our families have been inseparable, and they were there when my son Seth was battling his substance abuse, his addiction, when he went to prison, all the things that we dealt with. The Renners were here every moment, and I'm just forever grateful for what they have done for me.
Hey guys, while we continue on with Jeff, I know there's a decent audience here. Get your questions in. If you have questions for Jeff, toss them in the comments. We'll certainly, ask your questions and kind of get that dialogue going. But I know Ryan, you're thinking about it, and I want to get to Jeff and the Living Undeterred mission and kind of what it's about and where it came from. Obviously, we know where it came from, but kind of that idea and walk us through that a little bit.
I have to laugh. This is how dumb I am. I've been on private chat mode the whole time. I thought, man, no one's listening. I mean, that's living in my head, guys.
We were listening. Corey and I are in the private chat. Don't worry, buddy.
I'm having this great talk with Corey and Ryan, but we're talking to nobody. And then I click over to comments and I see I'm going, okay, fine. There's people out there. And that's living in my world right there.
I'll copy and paste all the comments and throw them in the private chat. You just stay put. We'll get this done.
I'm a train wreck, guys.
Somebody call Molly. Where is Molly when you need her? No.
So there's okay. Anyway, what was the question? I already forgot.
Let's get into Living Undeterred.
Okay. So I wrote this book called This One's For You. And I met a gentleman a few years back. His name's Stephen Grant. And he's an insurance agent out in South Carolina. And he lost his only two sons, Chris and Kelly, to a heroin overdose 5 years apart, 20 years ago. So here's a dad in the business, lost one son, 5 years later lost another, his only two sons. He wrote a book called Don't Forget Me. And I stumbled across it because he was featured in the New York, the bean counter is on. He wrote a book and he was featured in the Wall Street Journal. So I went to Amazon, bought his book, read it, and that day I was on the phone with Steve. And I said, Steve, you and I are going to become soulmates because you are my hero. I have two sons still left. I have three. I lost one. I have 2/3 of my kids still here. I'm very lucky from that regards. You lost your only two. How in the hell did you not join them? And he told me, and we sat on the phone and talked for 2 hours. We cried, we hugged, however you can do that over the phone. Became great friends. And now I can call him anytime in the night. He can call me, we can talk. And he was the genesis behind my book. And so I locked myself in my studio for a year, some days 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and wrote this book. I got half done, tore it up, sent out the manuscript. There's things in it people didn't think I should go down, roads I went down, tore it up and restarted. Finally, I came up with a book. And I published it on 9/25 of last year, which would have been my son's birthday. I wanted to publish my book on Seth's birthday, not his death day. Big difference there for me. And the rest is history. And then from the book, I started getting a lot of people asking me, hey, Jeff, what do you think about this? And you ought to write a blog. And so I said, okay, I'll start writing a blog. And I noticed in my book that in my first chapter, I talked about my favorite word is undeterred. That's my favorite word. It's a word that's not used a lot because people use resilience and toughness and all these things. I like undeterred. And so this live undeterred methodology, ideology kind of popped into my head. And so then I created this website called Living Undeterred. And that's now kind of my life's mission is to promote this ideology of living undeterred instead of focusing on addiction and substance abuse, which is really where I initially wanted to go down that road. But I thought there's a lot of people out there that are struggling that are not addicts, that lost a mom or a dad or a brother, that are not alcoholics, that are not, worried about alcohol or drug abuse. And I still want to help them. So I wanted to broaden my scope in helping people. So this live undeterred mentality can be anything. It doesn't have to be substance abuse and addiction. My heart is kind of with that because that's what I dealt with for 8 years with my son, who was battling his addiction to Adderall and alcohol and all that. So that's the living undeterred mentality that I'm trying to promote. So I have 9 blogs. Today is my 9th blog that'll post, and I have my 3rd podcast will post on Friday. My first podcast was an hour-long conversation, myself, my 2 boys, unedited, raw, genuine conversation with the dad and their 2 boys.
I loved when you started that. you started and you said, "Tell me what living undeterred means," and your kids just looked at you and they're like, "What the hell, Dad?"
And my youngest, who's my politician, says, "Well, what do you think about that, Dad?" He turned it into a, like you learn in sales. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. So I wanted it to show what people could be a fly on the wall, and they could see how to have these conversations with kids. I tell you what, you don't want to have them at the funeral. You don't want to have them after the fact. You want to have these conversations before these things happen. And when? I don't know. Is 12 too young? I don't know. There's lots of 12-year-old kids right now that are battling mental health issues right now. So I don't think you can have these conversations too young.
It's such a scary thing as a parent. I mean, I've got 3 children. Ryan has a couple. I know many of the people watching, and that will watch this are parents themselves. And I don't know, like, even what I would say or ask you about any of this, because I think it's just such a terrifying thing that happens. It probably starts somewhere outside of where you can even see it happening, and then by the time you can get involved in it, it's almost, I hate to say almost too late. Just I don't know enough about it. I know enough to have a dangerous conversation around it, but it's just terrifying as a parent.
Well, for my son Seth, and I talk about this in the book, he was prescribed Adderall for ADD. And I have ADD, and my dad's a doctor. He never gave me any prescription. And back when I was growing up, it was Ritalin. And that was what was prescribed. And the prescriptions went from 600,000 to 3 million, like in a decade. So it's insane what they're giving kids for what really should be looked at as a superpower. To me, my ADD has been my asset my whole life. It gets me in trouble, no question. But it's also got me where I'm at right now, and it's allowed me to look at tragedy and conflict as a challenge, as opposed to an excuse of why I'll let this make my life unravel. And so my ADD for me has been a strength. Well, when Seth was diagnosed with ADD, he looked at it as a curse, and this is where I get into debates with people about the disease method or the model versus the choice methodology when it comes to substance abuse and addiction. I am getting more into the choice methodology, and I'm never going to win the argument with a doctor that addiction is a disease. I am not going to go down that road, because I'll give you that. Okay. But you don't have to have 20 beers. I think substance abuse is where the problem is, not the fact that you're an addict. I mean, being an addict is one thing, but being a substance abuser is a whole different thing. So I used to get in these little healthy debates with people that were like, oh, it's a disease, and you're cursed, and your parents had it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll give you that. But when you open that refrigerator, you can't tell me that your great grandpa, who is an alcoholic, is making you open that beer. That's a moment in time. That's a decision you're making with the 2 people talking up here, not your grandpa that's not here anymore. And so I framed it in a way that is not condescending or judgmental of people that want to believe that it's a disease. I'll give you that. It's a disease. But you still have a lot more control on these decisions than you're giving yourself credit. And I'm a firm believer. Go ahead.
Where my mind goes with this is, how much work do you put in, and how often are you thinking about this on a daily basis with your younger 2 children, like just to be, to get them through the pain and everything they've gone through? Because, you dealing with it is one thing, but raising 2 well-rounded men after going through that is a whole different ballgame.
I told the boys when this happened that the most efficient teacher that we have as humans is death. And in having death happen to you at a young age is a competitive advantage to Roman and Ian over their peer group. They haven't had a brother die. They haven't had their tragedy is when a girl dumps them. Your tragedy is your brother died. And you now have a competitive life lesson, an advantage over your peer group. As you get older and you have a job that you get fired, or you have something happen that you're going to just almost laugh at it, the insignificance of how irrelevant this moment is when you go back and look at what happened to you. And you know, I lost a 20-year marriage over this as well. And I know people that say, well, you know, you got to fight through this. And you know, until you've had this card dealt to you, you don't know what's going to happen to your marriage. I had the strongest marriage on the planet before Seth died. And then we both dropped down for a year, and then we both started to grieve differently. And that friction caused a lot of issues in our marriage. And I finally made a decision that the best thing for the both of us, and I still love her immensely, I just couldn't be in the marriage. And so I separated, and that's how it happened. So we are going to have the best divorce in the history of mankind because we still love each other. It's just that when you're dealt with these things, it's extremely difficult to articulate how the dynamics of a relationship changes when you bury a child. It's just, I can't, I hope no one ever has to go through it. Although I know there are 186 people a day in the United States that are going to be Jeff Johnston. 186 people a day, every day. And when Seth died, there was 50,000 in the United States that died of opioid overdoses. And today it's like 75, 80,000 a year die. It was 55,000 a year. So it's not getting better. People are hurting. COVID's making it worse. And so one of my missions is try to get people to learn coping mechanisms. And for me, it's been two really big things. Meditation and stoicism. And I'm a compulsive reader. My stack I read every year, and I'm not reading business books. I gave up that long. I don't read any business books whatsoever. I don't need help in that area. I need help in making sure I don't go hang myself in a closet tonight. That's what I need help on. I don't need help on anything else. And I got people around me running Premier that, again, I like business books. I've had some really good, one of my favorite authors is Daniel Crosby. You guys know Daniel?
I've heard of Daniel, yep.
I interviewed Daniel. He's in my book, and we talked about the behavioral finance aspect of what I call financial hoarders, people that are great at saving money, but the money ends up controlling them versus them controlling their money. So far too often as financial professionals, we're consulting people how to accumulate wealth, but we're doing a very poor job teaching them how to spend it. And with the average inheritance being spent in 2 years in this country, what the hell are you saving your money for? Your kids are going to blow it in 2 years anyway. So I have no problem teaching clients how to spend money. And I think as advisors, we call ourselves wealth managers, but I'm really into teaching my clients the quality of life is at certain times are going to have to be more important than the quantity of life. You ain't taking any of this shit with you when you're gone. Sorry, I swore. You're not taking any of this stuff with you when you're gone. So you got to find creative ways to enjoy it. A quick thing I was thinking about, I just got back from a scuba diving trip with my son Roman. That's why I'm all red. We were in St. Lucia, and I try to go on 2 trips a year with him. Him and I've been certified for about 30 years, and he got certified at 15, and he's 17 now. I was on the boat diving, sitting at top, taking a break. We were doing our surface interval. We have to take an hour in between breaks. And there's this gentleman sitting here, he's 80 years old. I mean, if you guys ever scuba dove?
I have not.
It takes work. I mean, you have to be in halfway decent shape to scuba dive. Here's an 80-year-old sitting up here. Well, most 80-year-olds back in Iowa are sitting on their couch bitching about the weather and their health and blah, 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 and about Trump and everything else. And here's this 80-year-old. So I said, hey, what's up? And his name was Bing, and he's from Colorado. And I said, so Bing, how long have you been scuba diving? He said, 7 years. I said, so you started at 73? So I thought to myself, I've got like 70 dives. I took 15 years off from diving to race kids and stuff. I said, how many dives do you have? He had 550 dives. I'm like, that is my hero. We need more Bings on this planet, man. Yes. And I said, so what was your motivation? My wife died of cancer. He said, I was not going to sit around feeling sorry for what happened to me. And I decided to get into scuba diving. And I just wanted to kiss him. I love this guy. I got his contact information. I texted him yesterday. And those are heroes to me, not social influencers, not people that are athletes. That's a hero to me. And I'm trying to find more Bings in my life. That's what I'm trying to find. And so people look at me and they may they may put me up on a pedestal that, hey, Jeff's doing these heroic things. I'm not doing anything heroic. I'm just reacting to what happened to me. And if you two had the same thing happen, which I hope you don't, I would think you guys probably would be very similar to the way how you react to this. What's the old saying? It either kills you or makes you stronger. That is so true. And so my journeys, I'm meeting people like Bing every single day on social media, and I freaking love it. And so you asked a question about how much time this is consuming. I'm not going to lie to you. Every second of most days that I'm awake, I'm thinking about this in some capacity. And I practice all the time negative visualization. I got on a plane flying back. I thought to myself, what happens if my plane crashes? Now, you tell me how many people actually think about this. And I'm not superstitious at all, so it didn't bother me thinking about it. But I'm envisioning the plane crashing, thinking of all the great things I could have done with my Living Undeterred ideology, my next book I'm going to be writing, and how I feel like I'd be robbed of this opportunity for my two sons to watch them grow up. And so I thought to myself, okay, when I'm on the plane, I looked at my son Roman next to me and I started crying. And he goes, why are you crying, Dad? I said, because I freaking love you so much, man. I love you so much. And those moments right there, to me, is why I do what I do, you know? And to add another thing that happened, and I haven't talked about this publicly very often, but when my son died, he didn't know that his girlfriend was pregnant. And so I have a granddaughter, and her name is Brighton, and she's 4 years old, and she's got a dead dad, and her mom's in prison, and she's got 2 strikes against her. And so I told myself, right in my book, I tell you what, I'm going to make sure she knows what her dad was like. He was a great kid. He made some really bad choices, and he paid the ultimate price, but he was a really freaking good kid. He was a good athlete, good at guitar. He was super, super humor. He was funny. He liked music. And I want to make sure she knows what her dad was like, and that meant a lot to me. And so when people ask what drives me, these are the little things that drive me, these moments. And I refuse to live in the past. I'm right now with Corey and Ryan, and this is what I'm living for. I don't go in, if I go back in my past and open up boxes I've locked up, I'm not going to go open up boxes that torture me. I refuse to do that. I quit drinking December 24, 2017. I've never thought about alcohol since, and I was an alcoholic all the way up until that day. And I've never had a problem not drinking. I have 2 bottles of wine in my house. I look at it. My dog's named Camus, and my cat's named Opus. 2 of my favorite Cabernets. I'm not afraid of alcohol. I'm not afraid of alcohol. I'm not sober. I'm not an alcoholic. I just choose today not to drink. And I follow people on social media that I'm sober. I'm like, you know what? I don't play that game. I don't need public affirmation. This is a thing that between me and my relationship with alcohol. I don't need it. You're out of my life. I don't talk about you. So again, that's one little thing I made with my drinking. Another confession I make is I was a compulsive gambler in my 20s and 30s. Now, how does that look on your, on your resume when you're a financial advisor? But now I'm at the age of 54. I don't really care what people think about me, and the more vulnerable I can be and talk about my story. So I was an alcoholic, compulsive gambler. I had all the problems, but in the meantime, the public perception was I was building up this tremendous wealth management company, and everyone thought I was untouchable. The reality was I wasn't infallible. I had a big gap in my life, and it took the death of a child and the loss of a marriage for me to realize that I was just chasing the wrong thing. I was happy, but I wasn't at peace.
I knew last night, Jeff, coming into this conversation, I mentioned it in the comments that I couldn't wait to get to know you. And I think over the last, almost an hour here, it's just been, I don't know. This is what I think is so cool about the community that we're all trying to build here is having conversations like this that can lift us all up, right? This is just a rising tide lifts all boats.
I would agree. Social media, I was never on Facebook till last year when I formed a nonprofit. I formed a nonprofit called the Choices Network. And what my thought was I wanted to have an organization. It wasn't a sobriety organization. It wasn't anti-drinking or anti-smoking pot. It was about teaching kids and parents about making better choices. So the Choices Network is my nonprofit, and we've got 1 year now under our belt. So I went back to Facebook, and I've never been really a big social media person, And I found out that in order for me to have a nonprofit Facebook account, I had to have a personal account. So I got a personal account. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, "Oh, it's great, Jeff. You're in." Well, no, I'm not going to send pictures of what I had for dinner. I'm not going to send pictures of me out shoveling snow. And that's fine. If people like that, I understand that's the world of Facebook. But I had my personal Facebook account with one selfish reason, and that's to trick people into my nonprofit Facebook account. I have no shame in admitting that. But I am having fun now with my personal. So now I am posting scuba diving pics, and it's kind of like a drug now. I'm getting pulled into the world of Facebook, and I enjoy it, but I'm also very careful of trying to follow people that only post positive things. And I'm surrounded by positive people, and that's the world I want to live in. I have no time, zero time for any political, any things that are going to be negative to me. People can argue themselves, and at our age, how many people at our age change our mind on anything anyway? Nobody does.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I appreciate your obviously your mindset and the things that you went through. And if you could leave somebody with something tangible that they could do for their business or to increase their mindset, obviously we don't want these life events. What do you suggest? And I guess it may be your negative reflection. What do you suggest somebody do to get to the state that you are and your comfortability just letting things go? It seems like you're just epically convinced that with your hands off and just making the bigger picture decisions that things are going to work out. How do you get to that level of trusting people? How do you practice trust?
In my book, I come up with a mirror to, basically the 10 Commandments, but not being a religious person, I came up with something called the 10 Principles. And I sat down with Roman, and we have them listed in the book. And there are 10 principles that I live my life by, that I think anyone that buys the book will benefit from that. I also have my 12 daily steps in the book. And these are 12 things that I do every day for me to live a better life. And one thing that I've learned through meditation practices is a simple philosophy that I think can benefit everyone, is that you're always free to tell yourself a new story about your past. You're under no obligation to go back and live in things that happened yesterday. That's a choice. If you want to go back, if I want to go back and torture myself that my marriage ended, that's a choice. If I want to go back and torture myself, my son died of a heroin overdose, that's a choice. I'm not obligated to go back there and live in the bad things that happened. If I go back there, I'm going to try to find the good things. So my marriage wasn't a failure. My marriage was a tremendous success. Tremendous things came out of it. And I've got that mindset that I'm always free to tell myself a new story about my past. And so I live my life going forwards by looking backwards in reflection, not in torture. And that's the philosophical difference I think people have with getting over things like, I personally don't believe in depression. I know it exists. I've had depressive moments. I've not been suicidal, but I've been close. The year after Seth died, the two people in my head that were arguing with each other, the negative one was winning frequently. And now the negative one loses most of the time. But I've got myself to just realize that I'm always free to choose my emotive state. And I'm now on this massive quest of learning and trying to find peace in my life. I'm not too interested in happiness anymore. Happiness is a fleeting emotion. It's short term. Peace to me is a state of mind. I'm at peace in my professional life, and that's a lot to do with the people I work with. I'm at peace in my personal life, and that's a lot to do with my Living Undeterred and the book that I wrote. So what's next for me? I don't know. I made a mistake or a error in going down this road, as I didn't have an end game. I don't know how this is going to end. I know how it's not going to end is me hanging in a closet somewhere committing suicide. That's not going to happen. What else I do, where this goes, I don't know. But I'm so freaking excited every day. When I'm off with you guys, I'm going to continue writing. I'm going to work on my blogs. And I am just, I'm fortunate. I'm lucky. The 23 years I had with my son, I'm so honored it wasn't 17. Yeah, I'm fortunate he didn't die at 10. Did he make it to 24? No. But I am here to make sure that he lives forever in my heart. And that is my motivation. So, again, I'm so fortunate that you guys asked me to be on. I hope this helped. And again, I just tell people, try to live your life undeterred. You're going to have things thrown at you that are not going to be what you envisioned when you get up in the morning. Some may be very, very bad. Some may be a fender bender. Your car may not start, But I always think to myself, guys, no matter how bad I have it, Steve Grant has it worse. He lost his only 2 kids. I mean, how the hell can that be any worse? I still have two of my 3 left.
Yeah,
I'm lucky. I'm lucky in that regard. So I could spend 90% of my time on the tragic thing that happened to my son, or I could spend 90% of the time on the very beautiful things I have in my life.
Well, Jeff,
I love your mindset, Jeff, man.
Yeah, I just want to thank you personally. I mean, I know Ryan feels the same way. Thank you for taking the time this morning. I mean, our audience, I'm sure, has derived a ton of value and has really enjoyed this conversation as well. And I feel like, now we're all friends, and I'm going to continue following your journey and finding inspiration through you. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'm honored and humbled to be here, and I'm sure our paths will cross many, many times going forwards.
Absolutely. This will definitely not be the end of us talking. I'd love to support you, any way we can, and love your mission. So again, I'll go ahead and wrap up, but I just wanted to say thank you again, Jeff. I appreciate it, and I'll be looking forward to your next podcast episode when you share it on LinkedIn. I'll see it. I'll see you there.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take it easy, Jeff. Bye. Man, we have these reminders every once in a while that I don't have any real problems, and I don't want it to take that, So I'll really try to learn from these moments, as I always say I'm going to do, and I think it fades away. Even last night I was getting a little frustrated during bedtime, and I thought about the episode today and realized how stupid that would be, to just be, kind of upset in that moment or frustrated that things are taking longer than they should. And it just, I should be appreciating those moments that I have with my daughter and hanging out with her rather than wasting time thinking like that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, we're human. It's hard. Having 3 little ones of my own. I'm frustrated every night at 8:00.
Right.
But in the macro, you get them tucked in and you say goodnight, kiss them, and then I think the one thing that I've learned is if you have that self-reflection and can improve each interaction or each time, you're headed in the right direction. It's when you holler at them, you're a jerk, and then you don't appreciate it or you don't reflect on it, then you can kind of get into that danger zone there.
And Michael Gordon, I'm not sure if you're here. I apologize. When I got kicked out and brought back in, it lost your question for me in the comments, so I couldn't see it. But I remember that you asked, how do you pick a partner where you don't fight over every penny? And I would definitely suggest you message Jeff. He's an open book, and thank you. And he'll definitely tell you. My opinion would be that you have to find somebody. And when Jeff spoke, this spoke to me. You have to find somebody with like-minded values. You have to somebody who thinks like you. Because Corey and I talk about money, but we don't fight about money. It's just like, we need this. How much should you put in? I'll put in this. But we have the same goal. We have the same vision. And if he was, maybe if we were spending it without speaking while money is tight, that could be an interesting thing, as in a problem. But but it never becomes like that. I think as long as you have mutual respect and the same values, and you communicate to at least a decent degree, you shouldn't be worrying about the pennies. Because at the end of the day, your focus on those pennies stops you from growing your business. And if you're focusing on the pennies, maybe your vision isn't big enough. So I'd make sure that you're focusing on something that you really care about, something that really drives you. And I think the pennies don't matter as much, although of course money makes businesses work. So I don't want to be too high level. It has to work, but you got to find somebody like you. I feel like in your heart and in your mind a little bit. Corey and I aren't the exact same, but at the same, we're very similar.
Good stuff. Good show.
Yep.
And, thank you everybody who stopped in to watch and who gave us an hour this morning. I think that was really worthwhile.
Absolutely. Appreciate your time, guys. And again, we'll see you tomorrow at 9:30. And have a great day. Go get something done.
Live undeterred.